Welcome to APEC. It's February 20th, and I'm your moderator, Tim Ventura. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us on this call, along with everyone watching us on YouTube. We have a big session for you today featuring Paul Murad, who will be presenting an in-depth analysis of UAP and UFO phenomena, along with Mark Sokol and Jeremiah Popp, who will be giving you an in-depth overview of the top breakthrough propulsion experiments that they're currently working on, as well as some insights into future projects that they are planning. So a couple of quick reminders: you can view conference replays, details, and speaker information on our website at altpropulsion.com. Again, that's www.altpropulsion.com. Please save your questions for the Q&A session after each presentation. Please type your questions into chat. We'll go through them after each presenter finishes. So without any further ado, let me introduce you to our first guest, Paul Murad. I'm going to read his bio now. Paul has over 25 years of public service as a senior technology analyst for the Department of Defense, as well as 18 years of private sector service at firms including Martin, General Electric, and SAI, where he was involved in advanced state-of-the-art programs, including Apollo, Gemini, the NERVA Nuclear Rocket Engine, Space Shuttle, the National Aerospace Plane Project, and more. Paul's led several technical conferences, including the High Frequency Gravity Wave Conference in 2003, and he served as the conference chair of Section F at the ISNPS STAFE Conference, which focused on emerging propulsion, energy, and communications issues. So as you can all see from his bio, Paul is very well qualified to speak on emerging and exotic propulsion concepts. So now let's welcome Paul to today's call, and we will get started from there.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for being here in the first place. This has been a very interesting subject for the period of time of, let's say, 15 last years of my life. And I normally give classes on this out of OLLI GMU. And what I'm going to show you is probably the first class of a 5-class course. Now, basically, this is a very controversial subject to begin with. Is it real? Is it not real? What can I believe? What can I ignore? What is fantasy? And so on. Those are good questions. What I'm going to do is show you a point of view that might be different from you. And, well, we may look at the same thing differently. So all I'm asking of you is to be open-minded and consider what I'm going to show you as evidence. And I do not want to persuade you one way or the other about any of this, but just look at the evidence. And the objective here is to come out with a scheme on propulsion as well as others. How did this all start? Well, I believe it started with this top secret paper put out by Einstein and Oppenheimer in 1947, titled Relationships with the Inhabitants of Celestial Bodies. This came out in about 4 or 5 years on the internet because the document got declassified. Basically, what they're suggesting is that regarding our military capabilities with UFOs, we cannot do anything. We cannot do any damn thing about it. Are these creatures there for colonization? Do they want to integrate with us? And why are they influencing our areas where involve fission devices for warfare? Do they offer, or are they a threat to us? And it goes on to suggest that, well, these creatures must have political organizations. And are they looking for developing an independent nation, or are they involved in celestial bodies already? Are they involved with the moon or Mars? And one part of this document mentions that they found water on the moon and Mars. And I'm saying to myself, gee, how did they ever do that? So the only way they probably did that was looking at the polar caps. But they identify a word that comes out through all the rest of this presentation. extraterrestrial biological entity, or EB. And can we deal with these people? Can we make any arrangements? They are technically advanced, apparently economically advanced. And what is their moral entity? And can we make an agreement, a peaceful agreement? But then there's a little notch here that says, presence should not be revealed. In other words, maybe we shouldn't tell the public about all this. Anyway, what this does is it sets the pace for things like Men in Black and all these interpretations of the CIA and stuff like this, going in there for debriefing people. So they essentially accept the fact that these things are there. And, well, they could have accidentally caused a nuclear war. And all of this is in 1947. Now, what are the recommendations? Well, keep an open mind. These things are real. Academic scientists should share this knowledge with their students and public and breakthroughs in research. They should encourage scientific investigation and put aside a budget for outside the box research about these things. And advances should be developed that will lead toward new breakthrough research. Well, all that was in 1947. Now, Tim gave me a recent document called the Begin, written by the Begin Sadat Center for Strategic Studies. There's a lot of methodology around here, and it's hard to believe some of these things, and all of this is put together. Now, I've written several science-fi novels, and I could not put together the imagination if this thing was not real. So let me present this, and you can just hold on for whatever you feel like. They start out by saying the Blue Book, which is 1952 to 69, it's a farce. Forget it. They found nothing there. And there's nothing out there. There are no such things as UFOs, and we can explain everything. In this document, they then put forth historical milestones about Roswell. In 1957, they test a Roswell capture crash propulsion system. They try to fly it, 61. There's explosions in 64. And bingo, bingo, bingo. What's going on here? It's taking years and years and years to look at this stuff. And all of a sudden, in this document, it identifies EBE2 and EBE throughout. It goes further. I don't know. I've never heard of a Defense Advanced Research Agency. Maybe it's a mistype. But they talk about an alien research facility. Clinton went out there, and it identifies various programs. And yes, we got to get these ARF facilities going because we're expecting new visitors. And this shows you all the programs, the code names used with this effort, and supposedly under NASA and NSA. I don't know if I believe the part about NASA, but again, alien visitations. What's going on? Can we believe any of this? And then to top all that goes out, they identify the Red Book. This is a summary written and compiled by the US government on UFO investigations. The Yellow Book. This is the aliens themselves talking about their interactions and involvement with Earth's development and evolution. That's a pretty big bite to swallow. Now, what about aliens? Well, there are 400 billion stars in the Milky Way. Who's to say that we're so much smarter than they are? We're only 4.5 billion years old. The Big Bang is 13.8 billion years old. No one else can be as smart as we are. And Reagan, well, he goes to talk to these people for a briefing, and he finds one species is very hostile. He goes very further by saying, hey, we got this at Roswell. What did the Russians have? And the comments are made that, yeah, there's a lot of Soviets have seen UFOs, and they've even had several fighter aircraft chasing them. Well, there's also a rumor that there was a war at Kapustin Yar and the Russians didn't win. But let's go back to this thing about visitors. Where were they hit? Where were they shown? And this document is, showing this list of things. And like I said, it makes you think twice. There's several types of species: ebens, aqualoids, whatever. We'll talk about some of that later on in the presentation when we talk about propulsion. And then he has, the document has this representation that one of these EB1s made, that mankind has been genetically altered throughout time, and they established religions and Christ in particular on our planet. And later on makes the comment that Jesus Christ, or possibly Jesus, was one of them. And it's mentioned in this so-called yellow book about their influencing Fatima. Well, okay. And to make things interesting, one of these EBE guys tries to escape. And as he leaves, he has a weapon and he fires it at a god and it implodes. And gee, this could be very dangerous. But the point is that they can clone almost any living tissue into a creature and do whatever they want. Okay, wow, that's a whole bunch of stuff. What can I believe? What can I not believe? And this is impacting politics, social activities, religious activities, and the question about, gee, I don't believe in UFOs in the first place. Where's this coming from? Okay, well, there are other situations from other sources. One individual said that from 1945 to 48, there was 7 UFO crashes around Roswell's. I've heard of 3. And if you look at that time period, this is the kind of craft they said exist. What I want you to note that there's a spherical protuberance over here. Was there anything done earlier than that we have any information? Well, this came out recently, about a few weeks ago, about a message, a telegram from Mussolini, 1933. Hey, there was an aircraft, it crashed, and 2 people killed, or 2 people were in there. But it's not an aircraft. What do we do about it? Well, let's keep things quiet and let's hide it from something. And when we know what to do about it, we'll do something about it. And they show a picture, a drawing of what this thing looks like. 1933. Did you ever wonder why Hitler married Eva Braun? In 1937, it's believed that a wreck crashed in a Polish farm. The farmer was Eva Braun's father. Wow, what a connection. Again, if you were a science fiction writer, where would you come up with this stuff? And information is given about the craft, some details, talk about 3 small seats. 1 guy lives, 1 guy dies. These guys are about 1 foot long. And then the Germans take all the technology away for a highly advanced research facility called Dereza in Gory Sowi Mountains, which is in Czechoslovakia, around that area. And they're doing their thing. Okay, this is rather old stuff that they've shown. It appears that these aliens have had technical malfunctions. If you see all the crashes, there's obviously looks like technical malfunctions, but the Nazis are able to re-engineer what's going on. This picture came out about maybe 6 months ago on the internet. The claim was that this was a Russian crash. I don't believe that because he looks like a Nazi. So I think this might have been an earlier craft, possibly the one that was in Eva Braun's father's place. And then you start seeing things like this about the Nazi bell. Whoops, what's going on? This picture came out about 3 years ago. Just tooling along. This one came out about 2 years ago out of the internet. Note that the shadow here is crisp. The shadow is not crisp possibly because of topology or the electromagnetic field over the bottom of the craft, if it's all real. This picture came out in the last 6 months. Notice the 2 German soldiers. What's going on? And this picture came out with that one as well. Notice that's a different type of configuration. The historical information about the German activities are shown here. And the problem was that they put a turret on there, and every time they fired the gun, the electromagnetic effects on the saucer caused major problems, so they could not fire a gun over it. This obviously is a painting. I don't know what this is. I don't know what this is. There are 2 pictures of this, one here and one at an angle with less plasma underneath it. Oh, by the way, let's go invite Himmler to the O Club. Sure, after we show him the UFO up here. Kammler ran the nuclear program, the rocket program, and the Nazi bell. Victor Schauberger believes in vorticity, and he may have been the inventor of the bell. And I think if I had the funding, I could make a bell as well. Now, the problem is that the technology the Germans developed are very far-reaching for the 40s. There's a recent document that came out, a novel about a FOIA documents of interpretations or looking at various German physicists. And one of them is a nuclear physicist who says that he was interested in fusion. He wanted to put together a wind tunnel using tritium. And when it hit the boom on there to develop a shock, you would get fusion. And he had other ideas. He described various materials that would decay. And all of this was in 1937 to 1942. In looking at what happened to him, the interrogators felt he was blowing smoke. But if you look at it today, everything is correct. So something's going on that we don't know about, and we still do not know about. And if Hitler had waited maybe about 3 or 4 years, we might have all been speaking German. Okay, that's one wreck. What about the Russians, the Soviets? In 1937, there was also a wreck, and it was apparently cut clean in half, and the other half with the propulsion end was not available. It was held in Kiev, and if you look at it today, apparently the terminology used there suggests that this thing was cut in half by a laser. When the Germans took over the Ukraine, they moved this into Moscow, and because of the xenophobic attitude that the Soviets had, it sat there in Moscow for about 10 years and didn't even know anything about it. So there was another wreck. But more or less, in the internet, there's this film that claims there's a 1969 UFO that crashed. This thing hits a plane, bounces twice, and then it goes right into a forest. My concern is that I would have assumed more dirt would have been flying around, and it's hard to say if this is it. There's about 30 soldiers there with a KGB guy there, and it looks like it's all staged. And, you know, what are these guys doing? They're not able to get in there. And they show the film. But what's also interesting is they show this. And that ain't this. Now, Paul Potter got involved with a Russian scientist that was involved in he saw a crash. And I'll talk about that a little later on. So they're seeing things also as well. Do they chase these UFOs? Well, these are Su-27s. They're the best aircraft they have. And you can see one of the engines on afterburner. So they're really trying to move after this thing, trying to capture it. There's a MiG-29 chasing a thingy. So this is pretty obvious out there. And the Russians have events that, well, when we fire a missile, we're not going to tell our people what about it. So the Soviets kept themselves quiet. And if you saw an ICBM going to the Baltic to Kamchatka, you would say, hey, I see something strange. It must be a UFO. And then the Russians were doing some experiments. This is an unclassified picture of the Dome of Light. The Dome of Light is created by ICBMs, and it grows at a very high rate to the point that when this RV reaches Kamchatka, it's 1,000 kilometers in diameter. So if you saw this, you would start saying, what's going on? And if you saw this in the sky, you'd say, gee, there's a nuclear explosion that just went off. Recently, in the last month or so, this came out describing a Bulgarian UFO crash. But you have to be careful of what you see. He also showed this thing here, and that's a Bohr 2, where the Bohr 4 re-entered in the Indian Ocean. So it was used to test the shuttle thermal protection system. And, you know, you have to watch very carefully what you're seeing. But then something like this comes up and you don't know what to believe. When we had Mark McCandlish giving his presentation, there was a discussion about a hangar with 3 craft there. Well, this is supposedly a Russian museum, and there are 5 craft there. Is it real? Is it not? I wouldn't know where this is located, and I would probably suspect either in Kapustin Yar or Moscow. Yes, we chase UFOs also. This is a Phantom, and we'll discuss this triangle craft later on. In the 70s, Meyer in Switzerland was very close to seeing UFOs. These are very, very, very clear pictures. Now, people imply that he had models in the farm, and these are fake. And he has a tape recording, and I found it, of a craft about 50 feet above him. And what it sounded like was rotating machinery, you know, continuous. The thing that's interesting here is Meyer has one arm. So if he's got a stick here holding one of these things above it on a string and running the camera and a tape recorder, wow. But the point is, that this tape recorder sounds like rotating machinery. And again, you see some things about more crashes that have come out there. You know, it looks like these guys are they're not worth anything. That everyone's going to crash sooner or later. But it's amazing. They're expendable. All right, now I don't know if this is a hotel or a UFO out there in Nashville, Tennessee. I would suspect it might be, but the pictures don't say anything. This happened in Houston, and the claim was, oh, this is the 200-foot beam lamppost out there, and that's what you're looking at. Well, I think this is the lamppost out here, and I think here's the lamppost out here, and I guess the lamppost bent. So there's a lot of situations like this. A lot of places have historical rationale as something happened hundreds and hundreds and even thousands of years before. These are very unusual craft. I would suspect this is near a nuclear facility. And there's a lot of occupants there. This is Brazil. Here's one burning up. Here's a craft. And here's another. Now, usually when you're dealing with transformers, you have anywhere from 0.5 to 2.5 megawatts of electricity. You can argue that this went from the transformer to the UFO. I don't think so. I think it went from the UFO to the transformer. This has got to be about anywhere from 10 to 30 miles diameter. Here's some pictures at UFO at England. This is a critical component right here. Here's a triangle. Then every now and then you'll start seeing pictures like this in the internet. Again, is it real or is it not? And the Brits, according to this artist's rendition, also chased UFOs around. And I suspect everybody did that. And triangles, wow, what are they? Okay, well, I want to look at this for a change to mention something here. There's a theory that we, from the future, are coming back to the past because we are so intelligent, and apparently the viewpoint is that none of these other species can do anything like that. So let's look at some of these guys. There's a document in the internet where the Russians identify 100 species in this book. Here's a guy in the snow. He's not moving, obviously. Look at the features here. Here's Herbie and Harry going to the mess hall. Here's some features about the ears, the nose, the eyes, the neck, and the mouths. These are evens. And there are some accidents. I'm afraid to mention who I think this is. And lots of accidents. Note the three toes on the foot. And here's Bill and Tom over here. What I want to do is show you this. This was a picture taken by a Canadian who crawled up to 100 feet to this thing. UFO, and it was blinking lights all over the place. Now, just look at that. Can you imagine if you were him? And what would you do to describe your wife? And would she believe what you saw? This is rather fascinating stuff. Now, this is in Armenia. This is a sculpture that's 10,000 years old. 10,000 years old. Note the big head, small body, big eyes, tear-shaped eyes, pear-shaped head. Now, some of them aren't too good. This guy has an athlete foot problem. And if he was so intelligent, how come he's got no clothes? These are from Brazil. This is a picture that was in a big picture where this other guy was about 40 feet behind him. In other words, one species might be looking at another. These are insectoids. I don't know what this is. Okay, so did we get this from the future? I don't think so. I think there's enough information to say that there is something out there and it's real.